video, we're going to look at the topic of social media. We want to help you to understand the basics of social media ethics and also look at the policy creation to social media if you want to have a social media policy for your agency or for your private practice that you work in. One of three of our objectives we want to cover today is the first one is to understand the purpose of social media. We want to give you a basic understanding and definition of social media so you get a better understanding of why we have social media in the first place. Also, we want to help you to learn to use social media ethically. We'll be spending a lot of time looking at the ACA Code of Ethics to see what it says about social media ethics, and that way you'll be able to walk around with greater knowledge and understanding of that topic. And also learn the basics of creating a social media policy. And so we'll cover that later on in this training and also give you a free example of a social media policy that you could put in place in your counseling agency. And so the first question we want to answer today is, what is social media? Many of us are already engaged in some type of social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever the case may be there. But there's a lot of different social media that are out there. And so we want to talk a little bit about what social media looks like and what the purpose is behind it. First of all, we want to look at the word of social. This is the innate need for humans to connect with others. That we get on things like LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or whatever the case may be, the purpose of that is for us to connect. We want to make sure we're having some type of connect with other individuals on sometimes a professional level or sometimes a personal level, but we want to make sure we're connecting with another individual. Media is just tools used to store and deliver information or data. And so usually on social media, you'll see people using pictures or videos or articles they've written or whatever the case may be there to be able to connect with other people as well, because they want to share information with other people. And so when you put these two terms together, social media, this is just virtual technology that is used to connect individuals, build relationships, and to extend communication. And that's what we want to focus a lot on today, is the fact that we're trying to help to learn how to extend communication, but to do it in a positive fashion so that whenever we come in contact with other people who may be in the mental health profession or those who may be considered clients, we'll know how to deal with them in an ethical manner. Another great thing about social media is that it can be synchronous or asynchronous. There are several different social media platforms out there now where you're able to have live discussion, sometimes through video, through text, where you're able to connect with another individual in a live format. And for many people, they do that, use the asynchronous form, where they may post a picture or post a video and then wait for comments to come later on after the fact. And so it can be either synchronous or asynchronous. And the thing about social media is amoral. It means it's not really good or bad. It doesn't have any morals with it. And so when it comes to social media, it really is up to the end user to know how to use it in the proper way, because it can be used in a way that is positive, that it can be helpful to other people, but it can also be used in a way in which it can harm other people as well. And so we want to make sure as we go through this training today, as we look at social media and building a social media policy, that we realize that once again, it's really up to us what the end outcome is, whether this is a positive or a negative experience people have when it comes to use of social media. Next, I want to share a few social media statistics with you. Right now, as the writing of this training, the internet has over 3.17 billion users, and so so there are a lot of people who are online, whether they're shopping online or connecting to social media, whatever the case may be. But 3.17 billion people are currently using the internet at this time. There's also about 2.3 billion people who are active social media users. So out of those people who are using the internet, about 73% of those individuals are active in social media. That means they have a Twitter account, they may have a Facebook account, they may have a Instagram account, or whatever the case may be, but they have some type of social media account that they're using on some type of regular basis. Also, we see the internet users have an average of 5.54 social media accounts. And as I think about my own self, when I can see how this makes sense. When it comes to social media, I do have a Twitter account, I have a Facebook account, have Instagram. I have several different accounts. So on average, this says about 5.5 social media accounts per individual. So we see that people are really involved when it comes to social media. Also, about 91% of retail brands use 2 or more social media channels. And this is one thing that we see a great rise in. That whether it's Snapchat or it is Instagram or one of these other social media forums, we see individuals or businesses are beginning to use these channels in order to bring business into them. And so one thing I always urge people to understand is that even though you may not use social media that much, your competitor probably is. And so it's probably a good idea to get a better understanding of what social media looks like and be able to use it, but to use it in a proper fashion. And also Facebook Messenger and the WhatsApp handle about 60 billion messages a day. And so as we talked about in the previous slide, when it came to the social aspect, people are looking to connect. They're looking to be able to reach out and talk to someone else, to be able to have that connection with them. And social media gives them the ability to be able to do that. And so we see that these messenger apps give people, the individuals, the opportunity to be able to reach out and contact someone without necessarily being a face-to-face type of scenario. When it comes to social media outlet use, these are just a few examples of some users online. When it comes to Facebook, it's 1.7 billion users. Used to, Facebook was one of the newer things that came out that a lot of younger people were using. We're now seeing the younger people begin to move away from Facebook, and now their parents and their grandparents are now more on Facebook than they are. But Facebook still remains to be one of the popular ways of communicating through social media. Instagram, this is where people either post a video or a picture. We see there's 400 million users are using Instagram, so it's one of those ones that continues to grow on a daily basis. Snapchat, this is one that's being used by people of all ages. I've even seen businesses using Snapchat, where they either sending out a story about the business that they have, or pictures about things that they're doing. But the whole point of it is to make that instant connection with individuals who may be interested in the topic that they're in. Pinterest. This is one that's been around for a little while now. At first, when it first came out, I was thinking I really wasn't a big fan of Pinterest. But one thing I'm noticing is that a lot of individuals are using Pinterest for many different reasons. Used to, I would think that Pinterest was just for people who were trying to find a good recipe on something. But that's not really what Pinterest is about. Pinterest is about just about any topic you can think of. If you're looking for some counseling techniques that you want to use for a certain population, things of that nature, you can find that type of information on Pinterest. And so Pinterest is really one of the social media sites that at first had one specific purpose, but is growing well out of that. You see a lot more people using Pinterest than normal. Also, Twitter, where we have 320 million users. And Twitter has been gaining a lot of popularity here lately. We've seen political candidates who are using Twitter, many people who are what we would consider famous, for example, are using Twitter, or even businesses are using Twitter, because once again, this gives them an opportunity to create a big audience for themselves and to get the word out about what they are trying to do. LinkedIn, about 450 million users. LinkedIn, I would compare it a lot to Facebook, but you just take away the picture of the puppies and babies. LinkedIn, you spend a lot of time connecting and networking with people as they're looking for jobs, or connecting with people you maybe worked with in the past. And so we see that LinkedIn is really beginning to grow because of the advertising you do on there for your business. And once again, it's a way of being able to connect with someone socially, but for the purposes of your business specifically. And YouTube has 1 billion users. You can use YouTube for just about anything. People are using YouTube to talk about counseling practices, maybe the services they offer. Sometimes they will go in and do videos to talk about what they do in their counseling, what practice, what their philosophies are, different things of that nature. And so we see YouTube is one of those that continues to grow, and it's one of the most popular social media outlets that we have out there. Now, there are several other social media outlets out there. These are just a few to give you some examples of what many people are using currently. Now we want to turn our attention to the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics. One of the great things about the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics is in Section H, we get a whole section specifically on social media use. And so we want to spend some time here looking at what does it look like to use social media in an ethical manner. And so we'll spend some time with that for a few minutes. And so the first part talks about our virtual professional presence. It says, in cases where counselors wish to maintain a professional and personal presence for social media use, separate professional and personal web pages and profiles are created to clearly distinguish between the two kinds of virtual presence. And what we're going to do through this section is we want to read to you what the ethical code says, and then on the next slide we'll talk to you about what does that look like as we follow that code of ethics. Well, first of all, it's telling us that you need to maintain two separate identities in the online environment. Therefore, us, as we're using social media, I'm going to have my personal social media and I'm going to have my professional social media. Now, do not let those two things mix with each other. And so, for example, for my private practice, I have a private practice social media page, a Twitter account for my private practice. I have a Facebook page for my private practice, things of that nature. And then on those websites, I just deal with things that deal with counseling. I may put an article out there. There may be a new training I'm offering, maybe an inspirational quote, something to that nature. But that is where my professional stuff goes on there. I don't put pictures of my family or anything on that website whatsoever because that's separate, because that's my professional side. But for my personal side, that's where you get to see more of me. You see my family photos. You see just took the picture of the thing I just ate a few minutes ago, or whatever the case may be, or if my kid did something funny. Those are things you see on my personal website or my personal social media. And so it's important for us to make sure that we do separate our identities. And so for my personal, I'm Michael Jones. For my professional, I'm Renewed Vision Counseling. And so I have those two separate identities online. And the purpose of that is to make sure that I'm not mixing anything together there. Also, keep personal information about family, etc. on your personal social media. Once again, I don't put any pictures of my family on my professional social media. I make sure that I try to keep that all on my personal site. So if one of my kids are in a basketball game, or they're playing sports, whatever the case may be, that's where you're going to find those type of pictures. But that type of stuff does not find itself a place on my social media for my professional side. And so make sure we keep the personal, professional separate is very important there. Also, be aware of your privacy settings on your personal social media. One thing that that's come out within the past couple of years that people are realizing that if they are keeping their clients' cell phone numbers in their cell phone, or if they've called their clients from their cell phone, they've been noticing on Facebook they will begin saying, "Do you know this person?" and having this person be as someone they may know as a friend, and requesting them to add as a friend. And the reason why that's happening is because they're using their cell phones to connect with their Facebook page, for example. And so you need to be aware of your privacy setting on your personal social media. Make sure, once again, those things aren't connecting there. And so one thing that you might want to do is just change your settings that, when you make posts, you may want to make sure those posts stay private, just for your friends whenever you put things out there. The reality is sometimes you're going to have mutual friends with some of your clients. You may go to to your personal Facebook page, for example, and you may look at one of your friends' list of friends, and a client may be on there. And so I just want to make sure that I'm aware that I'm going to keep those two things separate. Another thing that can happen sometimes is maybe I'll post something on my website, and a friend of mine sees that and comments on it, and then their friend, who's maybe a client of mine, is able to see that they have made a comment on something else. And so that can break privacy there. And so what I want to do is make sure that I keep my privacy settings really clear on my social media, to make sure that only those individuals who I'm really friends with or those I'm connected with are able to see the things I'm putting out there. Also, any phone contacts you have can potentially have contact to your personal social media. And I kind of mentioned that earlier with Facebook. That if you're using your phone for social media purposes, for using your phone for counseling purposes, and then if you don't have the client's name in there, say for instance you just have the client's phone number saved in your phone, what happens is Facebook, it will connect with your phone and it will look for any contacts that you've used recently. And if that person uses that cell number to connect with their Facebook, then they'll end up being able to be considered someone do you know this person, or is this person considered a friend? And so once again, you want to be very careful on how you go about using your phone in counseling. That way you're making sure you keeping your personal and private separate from each other. But we'll discuss that a little bit later on when it comes to confidentiality of information. But specifically in this one, you want to make this video, we want to talk specifically about just making sure you don't have your names with phone contacts, anything of that nature, because once again, that can inadvertently pop up on your social media. And also be careful about engaging with current or previous clients on business social media. For my business page, for example, I don't have any issue with my current or previous clients connecting with me on my business page. If they come on there and they see a article that I've written or a motivational quote that I've written, then I may end up they may end up liking that. That doesn't mean that someone can go on my to my business webpage, Facebook page, and automatically assume that person's a client of mine just because they liked it. Anybody can do that because it's open to anyone. But if they post something to your Facebook page, your professional Facebook page, maybe about a appointment or whatever the case may be, then that's going to be a big issue for you as a clinician. So one thing you're going to make sure is, as we talk about our social media policy a little bit later on, is just be careful about how you go about engaging with your clients, especially in your business social media, to help them to realize that there are certain things that they can't, that certain things they should not do when it comes to social media with you. Also, next thing talks about social media as part of informed consent. The counselors clearly explain to their clients, as part of the informed consent procedure, the benefits, limitations, and boundaries of the use of social media. So once again, what does it look like? First of all, you need to outline expectations of social media use with your clients in a written informed consent. You want to make sure you have a specific written informed consent for any online client that you're working with, and also make sure that in this written informed consent that you specifically talk about social media. In this video, we're specifically talking more about social media policies when it comes to those who you work with, but you also want to consider a social media policy that you may want to have with your client. And once again, we'll cover this a little bit here in this video, but just making sure that they know that the connections, with the limitation of connections, can be with you in an online environment. Also, we can see that therapists can use their social media as a psychoeducational tool. There are a lot of great ways that you can use social media as you're trying to connect with current clients that you have. Maybe you are doing a week where you're focusing in on depression, and so you may talk about some depression techniques on your on one of your professional websites. Maybe so your client can go to that, they can see that may be something that may be of interest to them, and there's nothing wrong with them reading that. The biggest thing is you don't want them commenting on that, or them specifically saying, hey, this is very helpful, I'll talk to you about this on a session on Wednesday, because once they've broken confidentiality. And so you can use social media as a psychoeducational tool, just making sure that you use it in the right way and your clients know how to interact with you. Also, therapists need to discourage clients from checking in on business social media sites. This is something that I realized after the fact, that if I want to, for example, on my business Facebook page, if I want to check in and show that I'm here at my office, I'm able to do that. But if a client checks in, what happens is it shows that they are here at my counseling practice. So right there, they have broken confidentiality for themselves. And so I'm going to encourage them to not ever check in on social media that says where they are. Once again, if they do that, they've broken their confidentiality. There's really not any way of being able to turn off that feature through Facebook. But I want to make sure that I'm going to discourage them from checking in on my business social media sites, because once again, they are really breaking their confidentiality by doing that. Also, it is not appropriate for clients or therapists to friend each other or their family members. One thing I've been seeing a lot of with therapists is whether the client's a current client or they're a former client, they will end up friending that person on social media or sending a friend request or even accepting friend requests from the client, the previous or current client, or from their family members. And this is a big issue. The reason why this is a big issue, if you are connecting with your clients through social media or friending them, once again, the question now becomes, how do I know that person? And so now we're putting out there that we have some type of association with this individual. And so with this, what happens is you can find yourself in a situation where your client may now begin sending you messages through your social media. They may start posting to your page through social media on your personal one. They may begin to see pictures of your family, things like that. And I believe at that point you've crossed a boundary with your client, even they're a former client, because you never know when they're going to come back in again if they do. So just as a great policy, I just think it's inappropriate for clients to friend me and I don't friend them back and don't connect with them through social media, even if they're not a current client. And same thing with their family members. Maybe I'm seeing a child client and their parents want to connect with me through social media. I'm still not going to do that, because once again, the question then becomes, how do I know that person? And I don't want to break their confidentiality. So I'm going to make sure I don't do that through social media. Also, avoid using social media messenger services to contact clients. I don't want to be on Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or whichever app that you're used to using and connecting clients to that way. One of the pitfalls this could be is you may have a client who's in a crisis situation and they send you a message through Facebook Messenger, and so now you connected with them that way, and you may not even be available for them in that crisis or whatever the case may be. And so once again, I'm going to stick to traditional ways of contacting my clients. I may do it through a phone call. I may do it that way. If I do use texting to set up counseling appointments, I may use that, for example. But I'm not going to use any of the messenger services, because once again, those are not secure, and you'll be transferring client information through something that's not secure. So I want to avoid using any type of social media messenger services to contact my clients. Next is client virtual presence. The counselors respect the privacy of their client's presence on social media unless given consent to view such information. So what does that look like? First of all, and I think the easiest way to say this is, don't look up, investigate, check out, or research your clients on social media unless you have the written permission to do so. I know many therapists who have no problem whatsoever. They have a new client who may be coming in, and what they'll do is go to social media to be able to find that person. That way to help them to get some background information. Or they'll say, well, I found out my client was lying to me about this, whatever the case may be, whatever the scenario is, and I'll ask them how they found it out. Well, I found it out through social media. Well, the Code of Ethics here is saying you do not do that. You don't go on social media to find out information about your clients, because there may be things you find out about them they do not want you to know. And so I need to be able to honor them as a client, that they tell me things when they're ready to be able to tell me those things. But if I'm up there searching them out on social media to find out what they look like, to find out where they live, to find out who their friends are, different things like that, or even to read their posts, then I am breaking confidentiality. That could be a way of me breaking confidentiality, but also we are acting unethically according to the ACA Code of Ethics. And so I just simply don't look up clients on social media. Also, use of public social media. The counselors take precautions to avoid disclosing confidential information through public social media. So what does this look like? I think there's sometimes we can get frustrated with our clients. I think that's a natural thing. But I'm not going to discuss the client frustrations or client issues on personal or professional social media. And some people may ask the question, why would you not do that? Well, you never know who is reading your Facebook. So, for example, I may say, well, my 4 o'clock appointment today was just terrible. They came in smelling bad. I'm tired of them smelling this way, and it's getting a bit frustrating for me to work with them because they never pay their bills on time. Well, I put all this information in there and put it all on social media, thinking that no one knows who I'm talking about. Well, lo and behold, this client, I could actually be friends with somebody that knows them. And they could have told them, "Hey, I had a counseling appointment today with this certain client, with a certain therapist today, and this is what happened." And now they find out that I'm talking about them on social media. And so if you're frustrated with a client or whatever the case may be, then the best place to deal with that is either deal with them that way, deal with them in supervision, talk with a peer about it, whatever the case may be. But I'm not going to put that information on social media because it's too easy these days to figure out who individuals are talking about. And so I just try to avoid that at all costs. And also be careful about how much information you disclose when using social media to make referrals. There are several great websites and social media sites out there that can help therapists find referrals for their clients. One of the problems is sometimes people are too specific on the information they're putting out there. For example, they may say, "I'm looking for a therapist to work with a 13-year-old in fill in the city. In this city, this client was house recently burned down 2 nights ago, and they lost their parents, and so I'm trying to find a therapist that can work with them." Well, that doesn't take too much of a rocket scientist to figure out who their client is. All they got to do is go to the newspaper, and I can figure out, okay, whose house burned down 2 days ago. Oh, it's this person, and this person lost their parents, just like the person this one is describing. I've broken confidentiality there because I've given too specific of information. And so even if you are looking for referrals, be careful about how much information that you're disclosing on social media. Be as vague as possible, but also find the right person for them. But sometimes I've seen therapists give way too much information. And when they do that, once again, they are breaking confidentiality and acting unethically. So that kind of covers for at the beginning here, what does it look like for our social media ethics? Now we want to talk a little bit about creating a social media policy. And once again, there's 2 different sides to social media policy. Part of social media policy is something you want to look at when it comes to your business and what type of things you want your employees to follow if they're going to be using social media. But also when you're working with clients, what does a social media policy need to look like as well? And so one question people ask sometimes is, why do you need a social media policy? And I think that one of the main reasons why is that any information shared on social media can either draw positive or negative attention to your practice. And so I have to be very careful about what it is I'm putting out there in the public's eye, and whenever I'm posting on my social media, either on my personal and on my professional web pages. And the reason why we want to do that, because it does set an image of who we are as a counselor and as a practice. And so, once again, as we talked about earlier, social media is amoral. It doesn't have any morals whatsoever. But what can happen is sometimes we can share information on our social media that can really hurt our practice. You may be at a part of a practice of wondering, why do I never get clients? But then if someone does a quick look at your personal or your professional social media and sees some of the type of things that you're posting, then this could draw some positive or negative attention to your practice. Now, does this mean you don't have free speech anymore? Of course, you still have free speech, but I think free speech has to be used with some common sense, and make sure we use it in a proper fashion so that we're not putting a negative image out there of ourselves. Also, you are responsible for your brand. You must protect it. If you are a therapist, if you're running a private practice, or even if you're part of another company, whatever the case may be, the company that you're a part of, or the company you're running, it is a brand. You want people to, when people hear the name of that business, I want them to think specifically of you. When people think of Renewed Vision Counseling, I want them to think of me whenever they hear that name come up. And so because of that, I'm always in the mode of protecting my brand. Are the things I'm saying or helpful, or are they hurtful? And if they're hurtful, why would I want to do that? Because I can ruin my brand quickly. And the thing about it is, once you ruin your brand, it's really hard to get that brand back, get the positive look on that brand if you don't do it in the right way. So be responsible with social media and how you go about using it. And also, the goal of a policy is to clearly outline your expectations regarding online interaction, educate the client of risk, and have clear rationale for how you will or will not engage with clients online. So as you're creating the social media policy, there needs to be some expectations on how you're going to interact with people in this online environment. Are you going to be being back in contact with them within a certain time period? Whatever the case may be, they need to know what to expect from you as a clinician, what your plans are in using social media. Also need to educate the client of risk as they're doing that. Well, do they know how much of a risk they are by checking in to whenever they come to your place? Or if they're going to your business profile and they're posting about their counseling sessions, things of that nature, they're putting themselves at risk by doing that. And also just have a very clear rationale of why you will or will not engage with clients online. Don't just simply say, "That's something I don't do." Give them a clear rationale. Be very specific on why. Help them to see how working with them in an online environment, it could, especially through social media, how it could harm your therapeutic relationship that you have with them. And so I think when clients hear from you that you're trying to protect them, that you're there to actually help them, then they're a lot better or a lot more likely to be able to want to work with you because they can see that you have their best needs in mind. And so it's important for you to have some type of social media policy. So now this next thing says, what should be included in a social media policy? Now this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are, for me, I thought 5 of the most important things to put on there or to be a part of your social media policy. 1, prohibit sharing confidential client or company information. We've talked about that a little bit before. You don't want to share any client information, confidential client information on any type of social media, but also company business practices. You don't want your employees doing that as well. I think sometimes we get into this mindset where we think it's okay to share everything on social media. And that's not necessarily a good thing to be able to do that. I think there are some things we need to be able to keep to ourselves just for the sake of protecting client information, but also for the sake of protecting our company as well. And so just being careful about what I do share online and prohibit sharing, like I said, confidential client or company information. Also prohibit derogatory content. I think nothing is more damaging to a company or a client, or a therapist in general, is when they put derogatory content on their social media, even on their personal social media. One way or another, people are going to be talking about you in public. I think one of the best ways, especially when it comes to advertising, is word of mouth advertising. And if people know of know that you're a therapist and they see your social media page, you're always controversial, you're always arguing with people, whatever the case may be, you're using derogatory language or derogatory content on either your personal or professional websites or social media, then people aren't going to want to come to you. And so you want to be very careful about what type of content's out there, but really being very careful about making sure that nothing is derogatory. And once again, I am a free speech guy, so hopefully you don't feel like I'm trying to shut you down from having free speech. I'm just saying that just to make sure you do to use some caution when you're putting information out there. Also, you want to encourage transparency. So if I am working for an agency, I need to make sure in my social media that that people know that my views may not be the same views of that of my company that I work for. So I'm going to encourage transparency that way. That way people know where this information is coming from. Same thing if I'm on a social media website for a business, especially if you have a private practice and you have multiple people working for you. It may not necessarily be that your opinion on something may not be something that's shared by everyone else in your business you work with. So be transparent there. Let them know that these are your ideas as you're putting information out for social media. But also encourage privacy. Now, you probably wonder, how do you encourage privacy and encourage transparency? Well, when it comes to encouraging privacy, I want to make sure that I am keeping strong passwords to my social media accounts. I think on a daily basis, I see individuals whose social media accounts are being hacked. Information that they don't want out there is being put out there. And so I would just suggest to you maybe every 30 to 60 days, change your passwords for your social media account. This may be something that maybe you may say, well, that seems a bit extreme to do it that often, but I think in the long run it will benefit you to change as much as you possibly can, because it's going to keep your information private, which in turn keeps you from having to go back and doing control or damage control if someone gets into your social media account and puts out things about you that is really not true. And also be responsive to those who interact with you. You may have those on social media, especially on your business social media, who may ask you a question related to counseling or related to whatever you're working on at that time period. I think one of the best things is to be responsive to them. If they interact with you on Twitter, respond back to them. If they interact with you on Facebook or whatever the case may be, once again, we're talking about on the business sites, be quick in your responses. Because once again, this may be a person who may be seeking out help, and your responsiveness on there, or your lack of responsiveness on social media, may show them that you're really not interested in working with anybody, or that you're not going to be very responsive when they meet you face to face. So you want to be very careful about that as well. Well, I hope this lesson is giving you a little bit better understanding about what social media ethics looks like and how to create a social media policy. I do want to remind you that we do have a sample social media policy that we do have attached to this training, and so you want to make sure once you do finish this training up to look at that as well. It will give you some more kind of worded out a little bit for you what it specifically looks like to have a social media policy. But I'm going to encourage you to download that, edit it, make it into your own, make it something that is personal to you, that's personal to your company. That way when someone comes to see your social media policy, that is something it doesn't sound and look like everyone else's they can find on the internet. Well, I want to thank you for your attention and hope that this has been a very helpful lesson to you about social media ethics and creating a social media policy.